My first speaker, who is a founder and director, advisory group, head of investment, and board member for a royal family. She is the chief operating officer and head of investment and helping the royal offices from a long time. She is has worked and out in UAE and out of in the Arab world since late 90s. So you're talking about 2020, so it's almost 30 years of experience dealing with the Gulf region. She is Oxford graduate, high level talent, and the most interesting about women, as I see, they have fond of languages. So Najat is fluent in English, Arabic, French, Spanish, and Italian. So I'm quite honored that she is on the board, and I'm going to hand over the mic to Dr. Najat.
Dr. Musa, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I think I'm showing my age actually with that introduction. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly delighted as part of Gazelle Advisory Group to be a part of today's conference. We have delegates tuned in from all over the world, as mentioned in the intro by Dr. Musa, and I'm truly honored to be invited to be part of this distinguished panel. We have a wonderful slate of speakers today. Wonderful female leaders in the UAE, from the UAE, and the wider Arab world and beyond. Myself, I'm a British-born Moroccan. I've been schooled in the UK. I've lived in different parts of the world, Singapore, the UAE, the UK, Saudi Arabia, on and on. And it's that mixture of experience which I think has led to my ability to speak widely on women's rights and the equality of opportunity that should be afforded to all humans on earth. I'm very grateful for this opportunity by the excellent committee today. I wanted to go through today a few statistics which will bolster my narrative on the equality agenda, which is not sort of a wish list, it's a human basic right. If we look at the global statistics, women's participation in the world economy could add as much as 28 trillion US dollars to annual global GDP within the next 4 to 5 years. That's an extraordinary number, $28 trillion. Women drive 70 to 80% of all consumer purchases, and the multiplier effect of female empowerment on overall economic growth strengthens exponentially all aspects of the value chain. In 2016, there were roughly 2 billion women in the labour workforce. Yes, the gender gap is closing. However, there's still a huge parity gap in crucial areas in every industry, across all sectors, in the workplace across the world. This is being addressed by numerous governments helping reshape public policy. However, there is still a lot of room for improvements, and some countries are sorely lacking in terms of their attention they are giving to this very, very important area. In 2017, for example, a total of only 32 female CEOs were represented on the Fortune 500 list, which was, yes, up from 21 from the previous year, but there is still much room for improvements, with men dominating 94% of upper leadership roles. So we're seeing a bit of a theme here, where women who are in the labour workforce are consuming the clerical roles, the manual roles, but the higher we go up the food chain, it becomes rather male, rather stale, and rather grey. So think about that. Think about the organization where you work. Think about your previous career path, your work experience, from the time you graduated or left school to where you are currently. Think about your direct reports. Who are the CEOs and the board members of the company where you work? Think about how that could be and should be by law, and I'll come on to that later on, by a board that is diverse and gender balanced. If we look at the Standard & Poor's 500, women represent less than 5% of that cohort. However, studies show time and time again, and companies and researchers are ploughing millions of pounds, dollars, into research that gives them the same conclusion. Companies with female leaders perform better financially. Companies that commit to diversity and inclusion perform better. The bottom line is better. Now, companies that do add women to their board memberships, that do have women as CEOs or CIOs or CFOs, which are few and far between, add up to 6 percentage points to their net margins. And having at least one female director on the board could reduce a company's chance of failure by up to 20%. Now, I do have the stats references if you want to email Dr. Musa, and I'm very happy to share that. But it's commendable that countries like the UAE are sort of making massive progress on the global platform. But other countries are really quite behind. We will park for now the work being done in Scandinavia, but I'll address that separately. If we look at the work, if we look at the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report of a few years ago, the UAE's global rank is as follows. They rank 7th or 8th for the sub-index of wage equality, rank the sub-index of literacy rate. They were first ranked for the sub-index of enrollment in secondary education, and they were first ranked for the sub-index of sex ratio at birth, the male-female ratio. The UAE is making outstanding progress on the world platform in the way they have been addressing women's rights, equality of opportunity, access to education. The Middle East actually, and the world in general, have outstanding levels of tertiary educated young ladies, which is wonderful. Literacy is outstanding. However, there is a huge disconnect between the tertiary education and the corporate front door. Why is this disconnect continuing to take place all around the world? We have banner headlines, as we did this week, with the wonderful election of Citibank's new group CEO, the first female CEO in the bank's history, which is wonderful. But that is one achievement of billions of women around the world. So I ask the question, whilst this is applauded, can we be doing more? I certainly think so. Having the lens back on the UAE, in May 2015, the government of the UAE, led by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, adopted a decision to establish the Gender Balance Council, as touched upon by Dr. Musa in the intro, to ensure that Emirati women play a leading role in the development of the United Arab Emirates. It's not tokenism. It's not pandying to the lobbying at the public policy level. It is giving the Emirati women their God-given rights at equality of opportunity and to allowing them to play a leading role in leading or co-leading the Emirates in the here and now and for subsequent generations to help shape the future path economically, socially, democratically for the Emirates, which is a huge task afforded by the UAE leaders, and it has had excellent results thus far. This council is charged to oversee the implementation of best practices and processes to ensure federal institutions achieve their gender balance targets, which support the UAE's vision to become one of the world's top 25 countries for gender equality by 2021. We are on the eve of that vision. We are at the cusp of seeing whether that has transpired across the length and breadth of the Emirates, whether that a vision has resulted in more female leaders, more women in the CXO role, and also more women who are graduates from STEM subjects, from the sciences, engineering. We have wonderful success stories of women carving out paths of their own in startups, entrepreneurship, mentoring other young Emirati women coming up. It is a wonderful success story. However, we still have a long way to go to not only reach our target, but to smash the proverbial glass ceiling. The council, as it stands in the UAE, led by Abu Dhabi and Dubai, carries out several functions. And one of them is to constantly review current legislation, policies, and programs to achieve gender balance in the workplace. Now, where else do we have such a gender council? Being British, I wish I could say we have this in the UK. Living in Singapore previously, again, Singapore's making great strides. Norway, Sweden, Finland, all making great strides in affording excellent gender parity, equality of opportunity, but all the countries have a long way to go. One such area in the Middle East, for example, is on maternity leave or lack of. This is called double burden syndrome. You have a woman who is tertiary educated, who is leading her path in her career, who perhaps has reached board level. However, she decides to have a couple of children, takes maternity leave, and she's only given 45 days. Imagine we are raising a generation of Arabs or British children or any humans, and the woman is only given 45 days maternity leave. And that's upon completion of only 1 year of employment. This is in accordance with an Article 30 of federal law in the UAE. However, I'm pleased to say that the UAE has readdressed the amount of maternity leave afforded to the Emirati woman, stating that a female employee shall be entitled to maternity leave with full pay for a number of 45 days or more, as per the recent change in legislation, including the period preceding and the period following her maternity leave. Now, countries around the world, even the USA, give women very, very little time to have a baby and then leave them somewhere with somebody, very, very high cost of childcare, so they can continue with their jobs to minimize the puncture of her career path, so as she can still sort of bring money to the family, because more and more women are becoming head of households, so as to try to go back to work, get a salary, at the same time try to raise her children. Surely the world should stand up and say, this is not good enough. Scandinavian countries are leading the field when it comes to maternity leave and maternity pay. They have 1, 2, 3 years with the guarantee that woman can return to her job. There's no guilt or burden forcing her to leave her child, her newborn child, with a nanny or in childcare or a nursery, which is so expensive and taxable outside the UAE, so she can go back and start her working life again. So this is an area where I feel that, yes, the UAE is making great strides of improvement. However, we can address the maternity leave afforded to women, which leads to the double burden syndrome. Now, a couple more points before I wrap up, is the equal wages for men and women. Now, in Article 29 of the Gender Balance Council, Article 29 states that the female worker shall be granted an equal wage to that of the man should she be performing the same work, which is wonderful. However, in reality, some companies are not adhering to Article 29 of the UAE federal law. So I challenge the local governments around the UAE to stamp out any companies which are violating law, UAE law, which states that equality of salary is enshrined in UAE law. We have to have an audit of all companies, local and foreign, and have an audit to state which companies are in line with Article 29 and which are falling foul of the law. This is so important because the UAE leaders have developed, researched this law for a reason, and it's for women to have the same rights as is enshrined in law. And finally, I wish to talk about board diversity. It's very close to my heart. I myself sit on several boards, and I'm glad to say that, you know, as time progresses, more and more boards are becoming more and more diverse. Not only because of, and I hope not, tokenism, where some companies say, well, we have 7 male board members, let's bring in 1 female, and we can tick that box. That is absolute no-no. So again, board membership should be on merit basis alone, and it should be to bolster the very fabric of the company's branding, the essence of what they stand for, the company's core values. And as I touched earlier in my speech, a diverse board, statistically, the research shows time and time again, a diverse board always leads to better profit margins, is financially more astute, and has a massive success rate over and above its male, grey and stale board counterparts. I thank you very much for listening to me today, and if there are any questions, I will take them at the end of this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Musa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Najat. It was really insightful and very exciting, and you shared a lot of facts and figures. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of benefit from it.